The first thing that caught his attention was the small voice, trembling yet oddly firm, that echoed across the corner of the bustling supermarket. "Mommy hasn't eaten, can you share expired bread?" John Mercer, a man whose life revolved around quarterly reports, mergers, and a schedule so rigid it left no room for spontaneity, froze mid-step. The words pierced him, not with shock, but with an unsettling mix of guilt and disbelief. He was a CEO, a man accustomed to people deferring to him, to smiling politely as he brushed past. Yet here, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning, he found himself confronted by something he had never anticipated: raw, innocent desperation. He glanced down. The boy was no older than 7, with dirt-smudged cheeks and big, earnest eyes that seemed to bore into John's soul. In his tiny hand, he clutched a crumpled plastic bag, the kind supermarkets give away for day-old bread. His mother wasn't in sight, and judging by the boy's thin frame and the way he fidgeted with the straps of his worn backpack, she probably hadn't been around much lately. John felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. Usually, life presented itself in numbers, percentages, and strategies. Hunger, he realized, was something you could see but never really quantify, not like profit margins. This boy, however, had brought it into sharp, unavoidable focus. "Expired bread?" John asked cautiously, trying to buy a fraction of time while his mind scrambled. The supermarket's shelves glistened with fresh loaves, artisanal rolls, and pastries that cost more than he usually spent on an entire lunch. Yet here was a child asking for what others might throw away. "Yes, sir," the boy replied, his voice almost a whisper. "Mommy says it's better than nothing." His lips quivered, and John noticed the faint bruises under his eyes, as if someone had been too tired, or too distracted, to care for him properly. A wave of anger, frustration, and helplessness swept over him. He could feel it rising like a storm in his chest. How could someone, in this city, in this modern age, let a child go hungry? His usual detachment, the kind that allowed him to negotiate million-dollar deals without blinking, was gone. In its place was a burning, immediate need to act. "Hey, what's your name?" he asked gently, crouching so his gaze met the boy's. "Ethan," the boy replied. His eyes, wide and wary, studied John as though trying to determine whether this stranger was another threat or a rare kind of guardian. John reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet, but before he could hand over money, he realized something. Money, while useful, might not solve the immediate problem. Bread, water, nourishment, these were the priorities. He nodded toward the bakery aisle. "Come with me," he said softly. "Let's find you some real food." Ethan blinked, disbelief flickering in his eyes. You don't have to," he murmured. John smiled, though it felt awkward, almost foreign. "I want to. You shouldn't have to ask for bread. Nobody should." They walked together, John carefully guiding Ethan past the aisles of expensive pastries. He noticed the boy's gaze lingering on candy bars, instant noodles, and the things children usually crave. But there was a restraint in him, a quiet dignity that surprised John. This wasn't a child spoiled by neglect, this was a child hardened by circumstance, yet unwilling to take more than what was needed. By the time they reached the bakery section, John had picked up a few loaves of fresh bread, a pack of butter, and some fruit. Ethan's eyes lit up, and for the first time, John saw a flicker of hope, a tiny flame fighting the darkness. "Here," John said, handing the items to him. "Take this to your mom." Ethan hesitated. She might be mad. She says she can't accept things from strangers." John knelt down again. "Then tell her it's not from a stranger. It's from someone who knows kids shouldn't go hungry. That's all." The boy's lips twitched into a small, uncertain smile. For a brief moment, the supermarket noise faded, and John found himself seeing the world through Ethan's eyes, fragile, uncertain, yet filled with small sparks of resilience. "Thank you," Ethan said softly, clutching the bread to his chest. I hope you're not mad at me." "Mad?" John laughed, though it sounded hollow even to him. "Mad? How could I ever be mad at you? You're just surviving. That's all anyone can ask of you." And in that instant, something shifted inside John. The cold, methodical CEO persona he had cultivated over decades wavered, giving way to a version of himself he had long buried, a man capable of empathy, of care, of genuine human connection. Ethan's mother finally appeared, rushing toward them with a mixture of relief and shame. She was young, worn, and clearly struggling. Yet when she saw John, she hesitated, unsure how to react. John stood, nodded, and said simply, "Your son is brave. That's all you need to know." Her eyes welled up. She didn't speak, but her gratitude was palpable, and Ethan squeezed John's hand before letting go, as though transferring a small piece of courage to him. That night, John couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. He replayed the scene repeatedly, the boy's plea, the raw honesty, the courage to ask for help. In his penthouse apartment, surrounded by opulence, he felt a gnawing emptiness, an echo of the hunger that had never been his own but had become all too real in that moment. He realized that life wasn't just about wealth, influence, and success. It was about noticing the unnoticed, giving voice to the voiceless, and sometimes, simply sharing bread. By morning, John had made a decision that would change the trajectory of both their lives. He didn't yet know how, but he knew he had to find Ethan again, to help him in a way that went beyond a loaf of bread. The next morning, John found himself back at the supermarket, pretending to browse the aisles but really scanning for any sign of Ethan and his mother. He couldn't stop thinking about the boy's words. "Mommy hasn't eaten." They haunted him, not like a memory, but like a call to action. Hours passed, and he began to worry that he had missed them, that maybe life would continue for them as it had before, filled with quiet hunger and uncertainty. Just as he was about to leave, he spotted them near the exit, Ethan clutching the same plastic bag, now full of the bread and fruit John had provided. His mother's face was pale but softer, the tension of shame easing slightly. John approached cautiously. "Good morning," he said, unsure how to bridge the distance between CEO and struggling mother. "How are you?" The woman looked at him, unsure whether to speak. Finally, she said, "We're managing. Thank you for yesterday." John smiled, but this time, it was tinged with determination. "I don't want to just give. I want to help. Is there a way I can do more?" Ethan looked at him, eyes wide with cautious hope. His mother's lips trembled, as if on the verge of refusing, yet she couldn't. Somehow, the sincerity in John's eyes bypassed all pride and fear. We could use help with everything," she admitted quietly. "Food, rent, anything." John nodded. "Then let's start with something small. Can I take you somewhere safe, where you don't have to worry about bread or bills for a while?" The mother hesitated. This was an offer so unusual, so unexpected, that her instinct screamed caution. But seeing Ethan's hopeful gaze, the spark of trust in his eyes, she nodded. The arrangement wasn't easy. John wasn't used to dealing with real human vulnerability outside of boardrooms, and they weren't used to accepting help. Yet over the next weeks, boundaries blurred. He rented a small apartment for them temporarily, set up accounts to cover food and essential expenses, and slowly, they began to build trust. Ethan thrived quickly. Free from the gnawing worry of hunger, he laughed more, slept better, and began to share stories of his life. The quiet sadness of his mother's struggles, the fleeting kindnesses that had kept him going, and the small dreams he had tucked away like precious treasures. John found himself drawn into this tiny world, learning patience, humility, and the quiet power of presence. Meetings that once consumed him lost their edge, replaced by moments like watching Ethan struggle to learn how to bake a loaf of bread or listening to his mother hum softly in the kitchen. One evening, while they were eating dinner together, a modest but warm meal, Ethan looked up and said, "You know, I never thought someone like you would care about someone like me." John's throat tightened. "I care," he said simply. "I think everyone deserves someone to care." The mother, standing by the sink, smiled faintly, tears glimmering. I can't thank you enough," she whispered. "You've given us more than food. You've given us hope." In that quiet apartment, filled with the aroma of home-cooked food and the soft hum of life resuming, John realized something profound. The wealth he had spent his life chasing could never replace the impact of human connection. The power of a single act, a shared loaf of bread, a few kind words, had transformed not only the lives of a struggling mother and child but his own as well. Over time, he continued to support them, but more importantly, he continued to invest in them as people. They taught him patience, empathy, and the importance of noticing the unnoticed. And in return, he gave them stability, opportunity, and a reminder that the world, despite its cruelty, could also be a place of unexpected kindness. John often thought back to that first moment, the boy asking for expired bread. He remembered the fear, the humility, and the innocence in Ethan's eyes. That small plea had sparked a chain reaction, changing lives in ways no boardroom could ever replicate. And late at night, as he sat alone in his office, he smiled quietly. He knew now that real wealth wasn't measured in numbers, contracts, or stock portfolios. It was measured in hearts touched, lives lifted, and the courage to care when no one else would. Ethan and his mother had taught him that. And in doing so, they had also taught him how to truly live.